Have you ever wondered why the Middle East seems to be trapped in an endless cycle of conflict? Why do we constantly hear about wars between Israel and Arab nations? Why do even Muslim countries fight among themselves? The answer to these questions might surprise you. It's not found in modern politics or recent history. Instead, it lies buried in an ancient story that happened over 4,000 years ago. Two brothers, born from the same father but different mothers, locked in a rivalry that would echo through thousands of years and shape the destiny of entire civilizations. These weren't ordinary brothers. Their names were Isaac and Ishmael, and they were the sons of Abraham, one of the most important figures in human history. What makes this story absolutely fascinating is that these two brothers didn't just have a simple family dispute. According to ancient Jewish and Christian traditions, their lives were like a movie preview of what would happen to their descendants thousands of years later. The Jews trace their ancestry back to Isaac, while Arabs and Muslims trace theirs back to Ishmael. And incredibly, the conflict we see today between these peoples mirrors exactly what happened between these two brothers so long ago. But here's the most amazing part: the ancient texts don't just explain how this conflict began. They also reveal how it will end. There's actually a scene in the Bible where these two brothers come together in peace, and many scholars believe this scene is a prophecy showing us how the modern conflict will finally be resolved. Let me take you on a journey through this incredible story that connects ancient history with today's headlines. Our story begins with a man named Abraham, who lived in a time when people worshipped many different gods. But Abraham heard from the one true God, who made him an extraordinary promise. God told Abraham, "I will make you into a great nation, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." This was an amazing promise, but there was one huge problem. Abraham's wife, Sarah, couldn't have children. In those days, a woman's value was largely measured by whether she could give her husband children, especially sons. So Sarah felt deeply ashamed and heartbroken about her situation. Years passed, and Abraham and Sarah grew older and older. The promise of having children seemed more and more impossible. Sarah was now way past the age when women normally have babies. She felt like God had forgotten about her, and she was filled with despair. Finally, Sarah couldn't take it anymore. She came up with a plan that was common in their culture but would create terrible problems later. She told Abraham, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my servant instead." She gave Abraham her Egyptian slave girl Hagar, hoping that through her, Abraham could finally have the son God had promised. Abraham agreed to this plan, and Hagar became pregnant. But this solution quickly created new problems. Sarah began to feel jealous and inferior, seeing Hagar carrying the child she desperately wanted. She started treating Hagar very cruelly, making her life miserable. Hagar couldn't stand the abuse anymore. She was pregnant, alone, and far from her homeland. So she did the only thing she could think of. She ran away into the desert, preferring to face death in the wilderness rather than continue living under Sarah's harsh treatment. Alone in the vast, empty desert, Hagar thought she was going to die. She was pregnant, had no food or water, and was completely lost. But at her darkest moment, something miraculous happened. An angel of God appeared to her by a spring of water. The angel gave her both a command and a wonderful promise. He told her, "Go back to your mistress and submit to her." This must have been hard to hear, but then came the blessing. "I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count." The angel also told her what to name her son. "You will call him Ishmael," which means God hears, because the Lord has heard your suffering. But then the angel said something that would echo through history and explain much of what we see in today's world. He described what Ishmael would be like. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility toward all his brothers. Now, this might sound like an insult, but it really wasn't. In the ancient world, the wild donkey was a symbol of freedom and independence. These animals couldn't be tamed or controlled. They roamed free and answered to no one. The prophecy was saying that Ishmael's descendants would be fiercely independent people who would survive against all odds, but they would also live in constant conflict with others. When we look at the history of Arab nations and the Islamic world, we can see this prophecy being fulfilled. These peoples have shown incredible resilience and have survived many attempts to destroy them. But sadly, they have also been involved in many conflicts, not just with other nations, but even among themselves. The divisions between Sunni and Shia Muslims, and the wars we see in places like Syria and Yemen, seem to echo this ancient prediction. Hagar returned to Abraham's household and gave birth to Ishmael. Abraham was overjoyed. Finally, at age 86, he had a son. For 13 years, Ishmael was Abraham's only child, and Abraham loved him deeply. He was the center of Abraham's world and the heir to everything he owned. But then, when Abraham was 99 years old and Sarah was 90, something impossible happened. 3 mysterious visitors came to Abraham's tent. As Abraham welcomed them with hospitality, one of them gave him shocking news. "Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Sarah was listening from inside the tent, and when she heard this, she laughed. But it wasn't a happy laugh, it was bitter laughter of disbelief. She had given up hope long ago. How could a 90-year-old woman have a baby? Abraham's reaction was also surprising. Instead of being excited, he was worried about Ishmael. He pleaded with God, "If only Ishmael might live under your blessing." Abraham loved his first son and was afraid of what would happen to him when this new son was born. But God kept his promise. Sarah gave birth to a son, and Abraham named him Isaac, which means he laughs. This name would always remind them of Sarah's laughter of disbelief. For a while, there was peace in Abraham's household, but as Isaac grew up, tension began to build. The breaking point came during a celebration for Isaac's weaning, a big party, to celebrate that he was old enough to eat solid food. During this celebration, Sarah saw something that made her furious. She saw Ishmael mocking little Isaac. But the Hebrew word used here for mocking is very significant. It comes from the same root as the name Isaac. Ishmael wasn't just playing around, he was challenging Isaac's position as the heir. It was like he was saying, "I am the firstborn, I should be the one getting all this attention." Sarah had had enough. She marched up to Abraham and demanded, "Get rid of that slave woman and her son. That woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." The Bible tells us that this deeply troubled Abraham because of his love for Ishmael. His heart was breaking. He had to choose between his children, but God told him to listen to Sarah, while also promising that Ishmael would become a great nation. Next morning, with a heavy heart, Abraham gave bread and water to Hagar and Ishmael and sent them away into the desert. That painful goodbye marked the beginning of a separation that would last for thousands of years. This is where the story becomes really important for understanding today's conflicts. Both Isaac and Ishmael received blessings from God, but they were very different kinds of blessings. Isaac received what's called the covenant. A covenant is more than just a promise, it's a special, sacred relationship with God. Through Isaac, God promised to create a chosen people who would have a unique relationship with him. This covenant included spiritual blessings and the promise that through Isaac's descendants, all the world would be blessed. Ishmael, on the other hand, received promises of worldly greatness. God promised that Ishmael would become the father of a great nation, that he would have many descendants, and that they would be powerful and influential. God also promised that Ishmael would be the father of 12 princes, just like Isaac's son Jacob would have 12 sons who became the 12 tribes of Israel. When we look at history, we can see both of these promises being fulfilled. The Jewish people, descendants of Isaac, have maintained their identity and faith despite thousands of years of persecution. They've given the world monotheism, the Bible, and according to Christians, Jesus Christ. The Arabs and Muslims, descendants of Ishmael, have indeed become numerous and powerful, creating great empires and influencing much of the world. But here's where the conflict comes in. Both groups believe they are the true heirs of Abraham's blessing. This creates a fundamental disagreement about who has the right to claim God's promises. The conflict between Isaac and Ishmael's descendants wasn't just about land or politics, it became a battle over who was telling the true story of what happened. In the Jewish and Christian Bible, Abraham's greatest test came when God asked him to sacrifice Isaac. This story is seen as the ultimate proof of Abraham's faith and Isaac's special place in God's plan. But in Islamic tradition, the story is different. Muslims believe that the son Abraham was asked to sacrifice was not Isaac, but Ishmael. This might seem like a small detail, but it's actually huge. The son who was almost sacrificed becomes the most important spiritual heir by saying it was Ishmael. Islam claims that the spiritual inheritance belongs to Ishmael's line, which includes the Prophet Muhammad. This disagreement about the story has led to real conflicts in the world. Take Jerusalem, for example. The holiest site for Jews is the Temple Mount, where their ancient temple once stood, but on that exact same spot. Muslims have built two of their most important mosques. It's literally one sacred story built on top of another. Even more fascinating is what lies beneath the golden dome of the Rock Mosque. There's a stone that Jews believe is the spiritual center of the world, the place where Adam was created, NW. Here Abraham prepared to sacrifice Isaac, but Muslims believe that same stone is where the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. Same rock, two completely different stories. Despite all this conflict, the Bible actually shows us a scene that gives hope for peace. When Abraham died, something remarkable happened. The text says, his sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him. After decades of separation, after years of not speaking to each other, the two brothers came together to bury their father. In that moment of grief, they weren't representatives of different peoples or religions, they were just two sons mourning their father. What's even more significant is the order of their names in the text. According to Jewish tradition, the fact that Isaac is mentioned first, even though Ishmael was older, shows that Ishmael accepted Isaac's position as the primary heir. This act of acceptance and humility is seen as a sign of reconciliation. Many scholars believe this scene is prophetic, that it shows us how the conflict between their descendants will eventually end. Just as the two brothers came together at their father's tomb, their descendants will one day find peace. Amazingly, we might be seeing the beginning of this reconciliation today. In recent years, several Arab nations have done something that seemed impossible just a few decades ago. Countries like the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain have signed peace agreements with Israel and normalized relations. What's most interesting is what these agreements are called, the Abraham Accords. For the first time in modern diplomacy, the focus wasn't on the conflict, but on the common heritage that Jews and Arabs share through their father Abraham. There are other signs of hope too. In the mystical branches of both Judaism and Islam, Jewish Kabbalah and Islamic Sufism, scholars and practitioners often find they have much in common. They both see life as a spiritual journey toward union with God. They both describe God as infinite light and humans as sparks of that divine light trying to return to their source. When people from both traditions focus on the personal, spiritual aspects of their faith rather than the political or tribal aspects, they often discover they're seeking the same thing, a deeper relationship with the God of Abraham. Christianity offers a unique perspective on this ancient conflict. Rather than taking sides between Isaac and Ishmael, the Christian faith presents Jesus as the solution that transcends the whole dispute. According to Christian teaching, Jesus doesn't choose between the sons of Abraham. Instead, he creates a new family where those old divisions no longer matter. The Apostle Paul wrote that Christ has made both one, breaking down the dividing wall of hostility. This means that when people become followers of Jesus, they receive a new identity that's more important than whether they're descendants of Isaac or Ishmael. They become part of a spiritual family that includes people from all backgrounds. This isn't just a future hope, it's happening now, in various parts of the world. There are communities of believers that include both Jewish and Arab Christians, who live as brothers and sisters in faith, showing that it's possible to overcome these ancient divisions. However, Christianity also teaches that the complete and final solution to this conflict will come when Jesus returns to earth. At that time, he will establish lasting peace and create what the Bible calls one new humanity out of all the divided peoples. The prophet Isaiah spoke of this future time when the wolf will dwell with the lamb and they will not harm or destroy on all my holy mountain. This points to a time when all conflicts, including the one between Isaac and Ishmael's descendants, will be resolved through divine intervention. So what does all this mean for us today? The story of Isaac and Ishmael teaches us several important things. First, it shows us that some conflicts have very deep roots. The tensions in the Middle East aren't just about modern politics. They go back thousands of years to fundamental questions about identity, inheritance, and who has the right to claim God's promises. Second, it reminds us that both sides in this conflict have legitimate claims and have suffered real injustices. Just as both Isaac and Ishmael were Abraham's sons and both received blessings from God, both Jewish and Arab peoples have valid reasons for their positions. Third, it gives us hope that reconciliation is possible. The scene of Isaac and Ishmael burying their father together shows us that even the deepest family conflicts can be healed. When people focus on what they have in common rather than what divides them, peace becomes possible. Finally, it suggests that the ultimate solution may not come through human efforts alone, but through divine intervention, whether that means the return of Jesus, as Christians believe, or some other form of divine action. The story implies that God Himself will ultimately resolve the conflict He allowed to begin. As we look at the Middle East today, we see both paths playing out. On one hand, we still see the fulfillment of the prophecy about Ishmael, conflicts not just between Arab nations and Israel, but between Arab nations and each other. The hand against everyone that was predicted thousands of years ago seems to continue. On the other hand, we also see signs of the reconciliation that was shown when Isaac and Ishmael came together, the Abraham Accords, the dialogue between Jewish and Islamic mystics, and the growing number of people who are choosing peace over conflict all point toward hope. The question is, which path will ultimately triumph? Will Abraham's children choose the desert of hostility, or will they choose to meet at their father's tomb in peace and reconciliation? The answer may depend on whether people on both sides can remember that they are, in fact, family. Despite all their differences, despite all the pain and conflict of the past, Jews and Arabs share a common father in Abraham. They worship the same God, even if they understand Him differently. They share many of the same values and hopes for their children. Perhaps the key to peace lies not in trying to resolve all the theological and political differences, but in remembering this fundamental truth: we are all children of Abraham, and our father's tomb is big enough for all of us to gather around it in peace. The story of Isaac and Ishmael is more than just ancient history. It's a lens through which we can understand one of the most persistent conflicts in our world today. It shows us that some problems have roots that go much deeper than we might think, but it also gives us hope that even the most ancient conflicts can be resolved. Whether the solution comes through human efforts like the Abraham Accords, through spiritual awakening like that experienced by Jewish and Islamic mystics, or through divine intervention as Christians believe, the story suggests that peace is not only possible but inevitable. The brothers who were separated in the desert will one day stand together again, just as they did at their father's grave. The question is not whether this will happen, but when, and whether we will choose to be part of the solution or part of the problem. Will Abraham's children choose the path of reconciliation, or will they continue in the cycle of conflict that has marked their relationship for thousands of years? Have you seen other examples of ancient stories that help explain modern conflicts? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this exploration of the connection between ancient biblical stories and modern conflicts interesting, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more content that bridges the gap between ancient wisdom and contemporary issues. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest videos. Until next time, keep exploring the fascinating connections between our past and present.